When you walk into a room filled with suits, spreadsheets, and smiles, it's easy to assume honesty. It's easy to believe that because something looks structured, it must be ethical, that because people speak in the language of valuation, capital, and strategy, they must be working in the spirit of progress. But in truth, much of what happens behind the doors of private equity is not about value creation. It's about value extraction, and the greatest deception of all is that it's done in the name of professionalism. Dishonesty in this arena doesn't shout, it whispers, it hides in structure, in jargon, in contracts so complex that even the people signing them don't fully understand. The dishonesty isn't always about lying directly. It's about constructing a version of reality that favors the firm at every turn. It's about manipulating belief, and once belief is manipulated, behavior follows. This is not about villains in expensive offices. It's about understanding the psychology that fuels this system. Private equity thrives on illusion. It thrives on the perception of opportunity. The feeling that you're part of something exclusive, something only a few get access to. But exclusivity is often the bait, not the benefit. The moment you believe that access equals advantage, you've already surrendered your edge. Because in markets and in life, the real power always belongs to the one who defines the narrative. What makes this world dangerous is not the greed itself. It's the disguise that greed wears. It dresses itself as sophistication. It speaks in the language of structure, of optimization, of efficiency. But the true product being sold is not ownership. It's trust. And that trust is monetized over and over again. When a private equity firm acquires a business, the story they tell is one of transformation. We'll make it more efficient. We'll streamline operations. We'll create value. But often what happens is value extraction, stripping assets, leveraging debt, and presenting short-term results that look like success while hollowing out the long-term sustainability of the enterprise. To the public eye, it's a success story. To the employees, the community, and the investors who believed in the mission, it's quiet destruction. But here's the deeper truth. Dishonesty isn't just a moral flaw, it's a psychological weapon. Because markets are emotional systems, not mathematical ones. The moment someone can control your perception of risk and reward, they can control your behavior and your money. Private equity firms understand this better than most. They know that by shaping how you feel, they can shape what you do. And once you act under their narrative, you are no longer operating under your own truth. That's why the edge in this game isn't having more data. It's having emotional clarity, the ability to see without being seduced by presentation, the ability to look past the surface and ask, what is the real incentive here? Who benefits most from this structure? When you learn to question incentives, you uncover truth, because incentives are the fingerprints of intent. You see, most people in finance chase information, the next deal, the next insider tip, the next opportunity to get in early. But real mastery doesn't come from chasing information. It comes from understanding motivation. Why does this deal exist? Why is this structure the way it is? Why are they selling it to me now? Every dishonest move in private equity hides behind a psychological motive, fear, greed, or the illusion of safety. Once you understand those motives, you stop being manipulated by them. I've always said the market mirrors human psychology, and private equity is one of the clearest mirrors you'll ever see. It reflects ambition, fear, greed, and the endless human desire for validation. These firms play on that desire. They understand that investors don't just want returns. They want to feel intelligent, privileged, part of something extraordinary. So they craft that illusion. They sell status wrapped in spreadsheets. And the investor, unaware of their own psychological need for belonging, buys not a stake, but a story. True investors, those who last, learn to separate story from structure. They don't get caught in the narrative of prestige. They look for alignment. They look for transparency. They know that real opportunity doesn't need theatrics, it just needs truth. When you train your perception to see what's hidden behind language, you'll start noticing a pattern, the pattern of persuasion. Most presentations in the financial world are not designed to inform. They are designed to influence. Every chart, every projection, every number is positioned to shape your belief. And belief is the foundation of every transaction. So, when you see a private equity deal that feels too polished, recognize it for what it is. Emotional engineering. That's not to say every firm is corrupt or that every deal is dishonest, but the systemic psychology is tilted toward manipulation. The incentives are built around short-term extraction, not long-term creation. And until you see that, You'll continue to confuse activity with progress. You'll confuse presentation with reality. Here's what separates the sharp investor from the manipulated one. The sharp investor doesn't get emotional about appearances. They don't need validation from others. They know that trust must be earned through transparency, not words. They understand that if something looks flawless, it's often hiding its flaws well. They seek simplicity, because truth, at its core, is always simple. The greatest irony of private equity is that its complexity is what allows dishonesty to thrive. Complexity becomes a form of camouflage. The more layers, the harder it is to see what's really happening. But wealth, real wealth, doesn't need complexity. It scales through clarity, integrity, and time. Dishonesty creates noise, integrity creates compounding, and here's where psychology becomes power. When you train yourself to see clearly, without emotional distortion, you become untouchable. You stop chasing appearances. You stop getting trapped in fear and greed cycles. You start making decisions that are truly yours. That's the point where honesty becomes your edge. Because in a world addicted to illusion, clarity is the rarest form of wealth. You want to protect yourself from the dishonesty of private equity? Then master your perception. Learn to read intention, not presentation. Learn to question what others accept as obvious. The moment you stop reacting to the market's illusions, you start participating in its truth, and truth, though less glamorous, always wins over time. The market doesn't reward the clever, it rewards the clear-headed, it rewards those who can see without distortion. Dishonesty can win for a while, but clarity compounds forever. Every illusion eventually collapses under the weight of its own deception. The firms that manipulate emotions will eventually lose the trust that sustains them. But those who operate with transparency, even if slower, build something unshakable. So when you hear about private equity firms promising revolutionary returns or transformative strategies, pause. Ask, who benefits if I believe this? That one question will save you more money, more time, and more peace than any investment manual ever could. Because in finance, as in life, honesty isn't just a virtue, it's a strategy. The true professional doesn't just manage money. They manage perception, starting with their own. And once you learn to see clearly, no illusion, no sophistication, no dishonesty can touch your conviction again. When people enter the world of finance, they come with an innocent assumption that integrity drives the system. They believe contracts mean honesty, statements mean truth, and valuations mean reality. But in the world of private equity and the markets that orbit it, integrity isn't what shapes reality, perception does. The illusion of honesty is often more powerful than the presence of it. The moment you understand that, you stop being a victim of appearances and start becoming an architect of your own awareness. Private equity firms are masters of this illusion. They understand that people don't buy numbers, they buy narratives. They don't invest in truth, they invest in confidence. Every glossy presentation, every growth forecast, every success story told in a boardroom or printed on a portfolio report. It's crafted to build a perception of integrity, because perception is currency. Once they have your trust, they have your capital. The danger isn't that they deceive. Deception is a natural part of the game. The danger is that you assume integrity exists where incentives dictate otherwise. The most dangerous belief an investor can hold is that everyone plays by the same moral code. The market isn't built on fairness. It's built on psychology, on beliefs, illusions, and emotional manipulation. And private equity firms have mastered the art of turning perception into profit. Now, this isn't an attack on business, it's a revelation of human nature. When money is involved, the line between truth and illusion blurs quickly. Humans are emotional creatures. They crave certainty. They want to believe in something, a system, a leader, a company, a process, because belief gives them comfort. But comfort is the most expensive feeling you can buy in the markets. Every dollar of comfort costs you a dollar of awareness. Integrity in the financial world is often a performance. Firms build an image of trustworthiness not because they value honesty, but because it's profitable. They sell stability, they market confidence, they project transparency, but behind every report lies a motive. Behind every metric lies manipulation, and behind every success story lies a narrative crafted to influence emotions. Here's the uncomfortable truth. Most investors want to be lied to. They don't want to face uncertainty. They don't want to question every promise or inspect every number. They want to feel safe. They want to believe that. The people managing their money know what they're doing. That desire for comfort is the weakness that dishonest systems feed on. In trading psychology, the moment you need something to be true, you stop seeing clearly, you interpret data through the filter of your emotion. The same principle applies to investors dealing with private equity. When you need a firm to be honest, when you need the numbers to work, when you need the investment to perform, your mind filters out reality and replaces it with hope. Hope blinds you to deception. The perception of integrity becomes your reality until the illusion breaks. Then you call it betrayal. But it was never betrayal, it was misperception. You created a version of reality that didn't exist because it felt better than uncertainty. And that's where most investors lose. Not to the dishonesty of others, but to their own refusal to see things as they are. This is the essence of Mark Douglas's philosophy. Markets don't reflect truth, they reflect perception. Integrity doesn't move prices. Belief does. It's not the honest companies that attract capital, it's the companies that can create the perception of being honest, stable, and visionary. Private equity firms have mastered this psychological leverage. They understand that people don't invest in numbers. They invest in stories that make them feel secure. Think about it. Why do investors pour billions into funds that promise exclusive access, inside deals, or above-market returns? It's because those words create emotional certainty. They trigger greed wrapped in trust. And when people feel emotionally secure, they stop questioning, they stop verifying, they stop thinking, they start believing. That belief becomes fuel, and fuel is what keeps illusions alive. You must understand this. If you want to win in any market, perception creates momentum, not integrity. Perception builds valuations, drives decisions, and manipulates outcomes. When the perception of integrity collapses, so does the illusion of value, and billions evaporate overnight. But those who understood the psychology behind it, those who saw through the illusion, are already prepared. They don't panic, they don't blame, they adapt. The difference between winners and losers in the financial world isn't morality, it's awareness. Awareness doesn't rely on others' honesty. It doesn't depend on transparency or regulation. Awareness observes behavior and understands motive. It sees beyond the words, beyond the numbers, beyond the image. Awareness knows that perception is the real product being sold, and it refuses to buy blindly. If you can train your mind to observe the emotional energy behind the illusion, to see why people believe, not what they believe, you'll never again be manipulated by appearances. Because the same psychology that allows private equity firms to project honesty is the same psychology that allows you to recognize patterns of deception. Once you see the mechanism, you take back control. Every firm that plays the game of perception depends on one thing: your emotional participation. Without your belief, their illusion collapses. The market is a mirror of collective emotion. It rewards those who can read emotion without being controlled by it. It punishes those who react to perception as if it were reality. The difference lies not in what happens, but in how you interpret it. So, when you see headlines about record-breaking valuations, massive exits, or billion-dollar buyouts, don't look at the numbers, look at the psychology. Ask yourself, what belief is being sold here? What emotion are they triggering? Fear of missing out, greed, or safety? When you start seeing the emotion behind the information, you detach yourself from the illusion. You stop reacting and start understanding. That's when power shifts from perception to awareness, from illusion to clarity. Remember, in markets, you can't trade integrity. You can only trade perception. That's why most people lose. They expect truth from systems designed to manipulate belief. But when you stop needing integrity and start observing perception, you begin to see opportunities where others see deception. You realize that dishonesty, while unpleasant, is predictable, and predictability is profitable. The lesson isn't to hate the game, it's to learn how it's played. Integrity in the market is subjective. Each player defines it based on self-interest. The only consistent truth is that perception moves everything: prices, decisions, partnerships, and even reputations. Once you understand this, you stop depending on other people's honesty to succeed. You build a framework of awareness, emotional balance, and independent thinking. That's where real power lives. Because here's the paradox. In a world of dishonesty, your clarity becomes your advantage. Your calm detachment from illusion allows you to see through manipulation. When everyone else reacts to false promises or misleading data, you remain grounded. You don't chase, you don't panic, you don't assume, you observe. Observation creates understanding, and understanding creates consistency. The moment you realize that perception of integrity is just another variable in the psychological structure of markets, you free yourself from emotional bias, you stop judging and start analyzing, you no longer get angry at dishonesty because you understand its role. It fuels the cycle of belief and disbelief that keeps markets alive. Without illusion, there would be no movement. Without perception, there would be no opportunity. So the next time you hear of a private equity firm promising extraordinary returns, don't ask, are they honest? Ask, what perception are they trying to create and why? That shift in thinking changes everything. Because the moment you stop evaluating morality and start evaluating motivation, you begin to see the structure of the game. And when you see the structure, you can finally play it on your own terms. You can't demand integrity from the market. You can only demand awareness from yourself. The market rewards clarity, not outrage. It rewards those who adapt, not those who complain. Integrity may be scarce, but opportunity isn't. As long as you understand that every illusion leaves clues for those who are emotionally balanced enough to see them, your job isn't to fix the system. It's to master yourself within it, to see through the fog of perception without becoming cynical, to understand dishonesty without becoming dishonest, to build your edge on psychological insight, not emotional reaction, because in the end, the market reflects you, your beliefs, your fears, your perceptions. The moment you become aware of that, the game stops being about trust and starts being about understanding. Perception of integrity shapes market reality, but your perception of that truth shapes your destiny within it. The more you depend on others for integrity, the more vulnerable you become. The more you cultivate awareness, the more unshakable you become. The system may never change, but your relationship with it can. And that's where freedom begins, when you no longer trade your clarity for comfort. When you reach that state of awareness, you stop asking, why are they dishonest? And start saying, I see the pattern. You stop hoping for fairness and start capitalizing on behavior. You stop reacting to illusion and start understanding the psychology that drives it. And in that understanding, you find liberation. Because awareness, not integrity, is what truly compounds wealth, peace, and mastery. Control is one of the greatest illusions in the world of money. Everyone wants it, but very few truly understand what it means. Most people believe control comes from trust, trusting a system, trusting a firm, trusting an advisor, trusting an expert. But the truth is, the moment you give your trust away, you've already surrendered control. Control doesn't come from trusting others. It comes from understanding what's happening and how you respond to it. In trading and investing, people seek comfort through delegation. They want someone else to handle the uncertainty, someone to manage the complexity, someone to filter the noise, someone to make the decisions. Private equity firms, hedge funds, institutions, they all exist to absorb the responsibility that individuals are too afraid to carry. But what they don't realize is that outsourcing responsibility doesn't eliminate uncertainty, it just transfers it. You still own the outcome. Even if someone else makes the decisions, the foundation of real control is comprehension. When you understand the game, how it works, who benefits, and what drives behavior, you don't need to trust anyone. You trust yourself, your analysis, your process, and your awareness. That's not arrogance. It's alignment. It means you no longer rely on faith where knowledge is required. Trust without understanding is emotional dependency. It feels safe, but it's a trap. It blinds you to reality because it allows comfort to replace critical thought. It's easy to trust when things are going well. It's easy to believe in a firm's integrity when returns are flowing and portfolios are rising. But control is tested when uncertainty arrives, when numbers stop making sense, when reports get vague, when the story changes. That's when you discover whether you built your foundation on awareness or assumption. Private equity, like most of the financial world, thrives on that dependency. They don't sell returns, they sell reassurance. They don't sell facts, they sell feelings. They create a narrative of professionalism, confidence, and exclusivity, not because it's true, but because it triggers trust. And the more you trust, the less you question. The less you question, the easier it is for them to shape your perception of reality. But understanding is different. Understanding questions everything, not from paranoia, but from clarity. It looks beyond presentation and asks, why are they showing me this? What's not being said? What assumptions are hidden in these numbers? Understanding doesn't assume integrity, it evaluates incentive. It doesn't react to what's being presented, it analyzes what's being omitted. That's the mindset of a professional, Control is not about predicting what happens next. It's about knowing how to respond no matter what happens. That's the level of mental freedom most investors never reach because they confuse comfort with control. They think being told what they want to hear means they're safe. They think consistency of narrative equals consistency of truth. But control isn't about being told, it's about knowing. The most dangerous 4 words in finance are "I trust the system." Systems are designed by people, and people are motivated by self-interest. That doesn't make them evil, it makes them human. But if you don't understand that, you'll constantly be shocked when the system doesn't serve you. The market doesn't owe you fairness. The firms managing billions aren't obligated to protect you. They're obligated to protect themselves. The only one responsible for protecting you is you. Understanding removes emotional dependency. It replaces hope with awareness. It allows you to see manipulation for what it is, a strategy, not a personal attack. Once you understand the motive behind actions, deception loses power over you. When you understand that a firm's goal is to manage perception, you stop reacting emotionally to their messages. You stop believing every forecast, every announcement, every quarterly success story. You start seeing patterns, not promises. In Mark Douglas's teachings, the essence of control is internal, not external. You can't control the market, but you can control how you interpret it. You can't control other people's honesty, but you can control your reaction to their illusion. The same truth applies here. You can't control what private equity firms do, but you can understand how they operate. That understanding is your real control. Every illusion of control in the financial world is built on one weakness: emotional need. The need to feel safe, the need to feel certain, the need to believe someone knows better. But the moment you realize that nobody truly knows, that everyone is interpreting uncertainty through their own bias, you stop giving your power away. You stop chasing authority and start developing awareness. Understanding is built through observation, not opinion. You don't need access to inside information or elite education. You just need to watch behavior. Look at how decisions are made. Look at how communication changes when money is at risk. Look at how transparency fades when results decline. Patterns always expose truth, but you can only see those patterns if you aren't emotionally attached to the people or institutions creating them. When you understand that, you stop needing to trust anyone. You start operating from self-reliance, not isolation, but independence of thought. You can listen to others, but you don't depend on them. You can consider advice, but you don't surrender to it. You can hear stories, but you filter them through your understanding of incentives and probabilities. That's real control. Not control over others, but over yourself. The truth is, people don't lose because of dishonest firms. They lose because they trusted what they didn't understand. They believed the story, not the structure. They wanted the reward without owning the responsibility. But success in any market demands emotional maturity, the ability to see things as they are, not as you wish them to be. Think of every great investor or trader you've ever studied. Their edge isn't secret information. It's mental clarity. They don't need to trust because they understand. They know how the game works. They've seen how human behavior drives decisions. They've learned that every promise in the financial world is conditional, and every opportunity carries hidden risk. That understanding allows them to stay calm when others panic, patient when others rush, and detached when others get emotional. That's control. You can't outsource awareness. You can't hire someone to understand for you. The moment you hand that responsibility away, you also hand away your peace of mind. Because when things go wrong, you have no foundation to stand on. You only have blame. And blame is the enemy of growth that keeps you focused on what others did wrong instead of what you failed to understand. Control, then, is a mindset. It's a daily discipline of awareness. It means taking full responsibility for your perception, your reaction, your process. It means accepting that no matter how persuasive the story, how respected the firm, or how confident the tone, you are still responsible for interpreting reality accurately. Nobody can do that for you. The irony is that once you stop trying to control external outcomes and focus on understanding internal reactions, you gain more control than ever. You stop overreacting. You stop feeling betrayed by manipulation. You stop swinging between fear and greed. You start seeing through noise. You start anticipating behavior, not because you can predict it, but because you understand what drives it. That's why the best traders and investors never talk about trust. They talk about process. They don't need reassurance from others because they find certainty within themselves, in their preparation, their awareness, their ability to adapt. Trusting others is optional. Understanding is mandatory. In the world of private equity, where everything is wrapped in complexity and jargon, the simplest truth is also the most powerful. The more you understand, the less you can be controlled. Every contract, every report, every deal is a tool. And tools only work in the hands of those who know how to use them. To the uninformed, they're traps. To the aware, they're opportunities. So stop asking, who can I trust? And start asking, what do I understand? Because the moment you make that shift, you take your power back. You stop being a passive participant and become an active observer. You stop being dependent on promises and start building your own insight. That's where confidence comes from. Not blind faith, but conscious awareness. The financial world will always contain deception. It will always tempt you with narratives that sound too good to question. It will always reward belief in the short term and punish ignorance in the long term. But understanding endures. When you build your confidence on comprehension, no manipulation can unsettle you, no crisis can shake you, and no illusion can own you. Control doesn't mean certainty, it means clarity in uncertainty. It means knowing that even if others act dishonestly, you can still make rational decisions because you understand the dynamics behind their actions. It means trusting your preparation more than their presentation. In the end, real control isn't about dominating markets or predicting outcomes. It's about mastering yourself, your impulses, your reactions, your interpretations. It's about seeing through the illusion of trust and realizing that power comes from clarity, not belief. When you understand that, you stop chasing control and start embodying it. You become untouchable, not because you know everything, but because you're no longer fooled by anything. That's the ultimate edge. Understanding over trust, awareness over emotion, perception over illusion. Because in every market, every deal, every system, the ones who truly win are never the ones who trust the most. They are the ones who understand the best. In the markets, protection doesn't come from policies, contracts, or promises. It doesn't come from lawyers, regulators, or reputation. The only real protection you have is awareness. Your ability to see clearly in a world designed to distort perception. Everything else is an illusion of safety. And illusions are dangerous because they make you feel secure right before the storm hits. Most people think protection means insulation, guarding yourself from risk, shielding your capital from loss, or finding someone trustworthy to manage your money. But the truth is, no amount of external protection can save you from internal blindness. You can have all the contracts, audits, and reports in the world and still lose everything if you don't understand what's really happening beneath the surface. Awareness is your only real insurance. Private equity firms and financial institutions depend on your lack of awareness. They thrive on it because awareness threatens their control. The more you understand, the less they can influence you. The less you question, the easier it is for them to sell you the illusion of stability. That's why the industry spends billions on appearances, polished reports, impressive titles, complex language, expensive suits, because those things substitute for awareness in the eyes of those who don't have it. People lose not because they lack opportunity, but because they lack observation. They're emotionally driven, easily influenced, and desperate for comfort. They want to feel safe more than they want to be aware. And the moment you choose comfort over clarity, you're vulnerable. Because deception doesn't target your intellect, it targets your emotions. The foundation of all deception is distraction, getting you to focus on what feels good instead of what's true. Awareness destroys that mechanism. It cuts through distraction and exposes reality as it is, not as it's sold. But to reach that level of awareness, you have to let go of the need for certainty. You have to become comfortable, seeing without guarantees, confident without validation, and calm without control. The market, like life, is filled with players who project certainty to mask insecurity. They talk in absolutes, they forecast with conviction, they sell confidence like a product. Awareness doesn't fall for that. Awareness listens but never absorbs blindly. It interprets context, motive, and timing. It knows that every statement in finance serves an agenda, to influence, to attract, to manipulate, or to justify. Awareness doesn't label that as evil. It sees it as natural. Everyone in the market has a motive. That's not the problem. The problem is when you don't see those motives clearly. Because when you don't, you unconsciously adopt someone else's agenda and call it your own. You start trading based on another person's belief. You start investing based on another firm's confidence. And before you know it, you're emotionally entangled in a system that never cared about your outcome in the first place. Awareness protects you from that trap. It doesn't shield you from risk, but it allows you to face risk consciously. It doesn't prevent loss, but it ensures that loss comes from choice, not ignorance. There's a difference between losing because you took a calculated risk and losing because you didn't see the game being played. One strengthens you, the other weakens you. Mark Douglas taught that awareness is the bridge between chaos and control. You can't eliminate uncertainty, but you can understand your relationship with it. Awareness makes uncertainty manageable because it removes emotional distortion. When you're aware, you see patterns others miss. You recognize manipulation as noise, not truth. You understand that volatility isn't danger. It's opportunity disguised as fear. The most dangerous position in the market is to feel protected without actually being aware. That's what most investors experience. They trust in brands, big names, or institutions. They assume that because something looks legitimate, it must be safe. But awareness sees beyond the logo. It sees beyond the pitch. It doesn't get seduced by reputation. It knows that perception and protection are not the same thing. Every financial disaster in history was preceded by people who felt safe. Safe in the hands of experts, safe under regulations, safe inside the herd, and every collapse revealed the same truth. Safety built on trust is fragile, but safety built on awareness is indestructible, because awareness doesn't rely on others. It relies on observation, experience, and logic. When you're aware, you don't panic during uncertainty because you understand the rhythm of the market. You've seen how cycles repeat, how greed disguises itself as innovation, how fear hides behind news headlines. You don't overreact to appearances because you know appearances are crafted to provoke reaction. Awareness allows you to remain calm in chaos. Not because you know what will happen, but because you understand what can happen. That difference changes everything. Awareness begins where trust ends. Trust says they know better. Awareness says, let me see for myself. Trust follows blindly. Awareness observes patiently. Trust gives away responsibility. Awareness embraces it. The market rewards those who think for themselves and punishes those who follow emotionally. That's why awareness is the ultimate edge. It keeps you grounded in reality while everyone else gets swept away by illusion. When you cultivate awareness, you become immune to manipulation. You stop needing reassurance. You stop reacting to fear-based marketing. You start making decisions from logic, not emotion. You recognize patterns in human behavior, how greed accelerates during bull markets, how denial dominates during downturns, how overconfidence blinds the masses at the top. Awareness isn't about predicting outcomes, it's about interpreting behavior accurately. Every private equity deal, every financial product, every exclusive opportunity is designed to exploit psychological biases, scarcity, authority, social proof, fear of missing out. Awareness dismantles those triggers. When you recognize that these tactics exist to bypass rational thought, you stop being emotionally influenced. You start thinking in probabilities instead of promises. The difference between success and failure is never knowledge. It's awareness. Knowledge tells you what something is. Awareness tells you how it behaves. Knowledge can be learned. Awareness must be developed. It requires presence, observation, and emotional control. You can't be aware if you're distracted by greed, fear, or ego. Awareness demands mental stillness, the ability to see without judging, to understand without reacting. Awareness is protection because it creates detachment. It frees you from emotional entanglement. When you're aware, you don't fall in love with investments. You don't chase narratives. You don't confuse confidence with competence. You see the structure behind the story, the motive behind the movement. And that perspective allows you to act with precision while everyone else is reacting with emotion. This is the paradox of awareness. The more aware you become, the less you need protection. Because the danger never comes from the market. It comes from your own blindness within it. Once you see, deception loses its grip. You stop fearing loss because loss no longer defines you. You stop fearing manipulation because you can identify it instantly. You stop fearing uncertainty because you understand it's the natural state of all markets. Awareness transforms chaos into clarity. It turns risk into opportunity. It turns dishonesty into data. The same patterns that deceive the unaware create wealth for the aware. When everyone else is being guided by emotion, you are guided by insight. You see what they don't, not because you're smarter, but because you're more conscious. If you look closely, the entire financial world is built on psychology. Every illusion, every manipulation, every opportunity comes down to how people perceive reality. Awareness allows you to see not just what people do, but why they do it. That understanding gives you control without the illusion of control. You can't stop people from being dishonest, but you can stop being deceived by them. The truth is, awareness isn't something you gain once, it's something you practice daily. It's a discipline, not an achievement. Every decision, every trade, every investment is a test of your awareness. Are you seeing clearly, or are you reacting emotionally? Are you observing objectively, or are you projecting your hopes and fears onto the market? Awareness forces you to confront yourself before you confront the world, because the real enemy isn't dishonesty, it's unconsciousness. You can't protect yourself from what you refuse to see. You can't control what you don't understand. Awareness gives you the ability to face reality without distortion. It allows you to adapt faster than anyone else, because you're not waiting for others to tell you what's true. You already see it. The most successful investors and traders aren't immune to loss. They're immune to blindness. They don't get attached to illusions. They don't get trapped by appearances, and they don't expect honesty from systems designed to manipulate. Their awareness becomes their armor. It shields them from emotional chaos. It keeps them calm, rational, and consistent, no matter what's happening around them. That's what you need to cultivate. Not more trust, not more protection, but more awareness. Because once you can see, you no longer need to be shielded. You become your own protection. You recognize danger before it arrives, deception before it manifests, and opportunity before it's obvious. Awareness gives you time, and time is the most valuable currency in the world of uncertainty. You can't buy awareness. You can only build it through observation and experience. It's earned through mistakes, reflection, and psychological discipline. Every loss, every disappointment, every broken promise is a lesson in awareness. If you're willing to see it that way, most people repeat their mistakes because they react emotionally instead of reflecting consciously. Awareness transforms pain into wisdom. So stop trying to find safety in systems. Stop seeking honesty in a world built on illusion. Stop expecting others to protect you from what you refuse to learn. The only real protection is awareness, your ability to stay conscious, objective, and calm while everyone else is lost in noise. Awareness doesn't eliminate uncertainty, but it allows you to thrive within it. The market rewards awareness because awareness creates adaptability, and adaptability is survival. When you're aware, you can't be fooled for long. You might stumble, but you won't stay blind. You'll recover faster because your perception isn't anchored to illusion. Awareness keeps you fluid, resilient, and free. In the end, you don't need to fear dishonesty, manipulation, or volatility. You just need to fear unconsciousness. Because as long as you stay aware, truly aware, you'll always find clarity in confusion, opportunity in deception, and power in chaos. Awareness doesn't make the world honest, but it makes you untouchable within it. In the end, the market doesn't reward trust, belief, or emotion. It rewards awareness. When you see clearly, you stop being controlled by illusion. You no longer chase integrity where incentives rule, or safety where deception hides. Awareness gives you power because it gives you choice. It's the difference between reacting and responding, between being manipulated and being mindful. The game was never about predicting or trusting. It was about understanding and observing. When you master awareness, you don't just survive the market, you transcend it, because awareness, not honesty, is the only true protection that can never be taken from you.